the excess of the rest of the world, even though you don't know them. I could paint or make an honest work. It somehow incorporates all of these elements, which were and are a reality. Claes is a way of getting an additional piece of information that's impersonal. I've always tried to work impersonal.
In the early 60s, printed images began to replace objects in Rauschenberg's work. The bank of images included anything from 15th century reproductions to diagrams from the Scientific American to yesterday's front page. As the images in his work in the 60s piled up, the paintings took on a heightened documentary flavour. He wanted to give canvas the accumulative flicker of a colour television set. The subject was glut. From television, film and photography, we receive a stream of images every day. There is no way of paying equal attention to all that surface, so we skim. The image we remember is the one that most resembles a sign. Simple, clear, repetitious. We absorb rather than inspect. Indifference becomes our second skin. Everything the camera gives us is slightly interesting. Not for long, just for now. The human extension of the glut of images is celebrity, which replaces the Renaissance idea of fame. The artist who understood this best and became best known for understanding it was Andy Warhol. Warhol is nearly as famous as Picasso, at least on the level of chit-chat and gossip. But Picasso was famous for his energy and masculinity, Warhol for his passivity and sexlessness. He became a famous artist by silently proclaiming that art can't change life, whereas others once did by loudly giving the impression that it could. What he extracted from mass culture was repetition. I want to be a machine, he announced. Warhol loved the sameness, an infinite series of perfectly standardized products. The image is less painted than registered. No nuances, just slips in the silkscreen. It looks coarse, grainy, quick. It wants you to glance at it like a television screen rather than scan it like a painting. And like American TV in the 60s, it's also haunted by death. And as with TV, the violence Warhol enjoyed got filtered through a cool and different medium, photography and silkscreen. These disaster paintings have one subject in common. Not just death, rather the state of being an uninvolved spectator. The eye passes them like that man passing in the background. But the nature of mass imagery fascinated other artists in the 60s as well. If Warhol and Rauschenberg were into television, Roy Lichtenstein was about print. His best-known source was American comic strips of the 40s and 50s, the stuff that artists of his generation who made the pop movement grew up on. To its detractors, it looked about as challenging as bubble. Take a comic and blow it up. But there was more to it than that.
I don't think it's dealing with the images that have come about in the commercial world, and it's using that, because there are certain things about it which are impressive or bold or something. It's that quality of the images that I'm interested in, the kind of texture that the dots make, and various things that are usable to me in my art for expressing that feeling. But it's not saying that commercial art is terrible, look what we've come to. That may be a sociological fact, but that's not what this art is about.
Printer's dots were the basis of Lichtenstein's style, a code that ended up looking very cool and abstract. It was a way of distancing the image, making it both big and remote. And like John's, Lichtenstein was intrigued by the difference between scanning and looking. You scan a frame in a comic strip and then flick on because comics exist to tell a story. But a painting is meant to detain you. Make a museum scale comic and you have another paradox about the way that we see art. Probably Lichtenstein's work has been around too long for its shock value to last, but in the 60s, when it was new, its ironies really worked. Another source for art in mass culture was the American billboard. James Rosenquist used to paint them for a living.
In my billboard painting experience, I painted hundreds of square feet of Franco-American spaghetti, and I painted large beer glass, 60 feet long, and some bacon. Now, this huge pieces of bacon, and the salesman would come along and they'd say, "That beer hasn't got enough hops in it, you have to make it a little bit lighter," or "The bacon is dirty," or "That Franco-American spaghetti orange is dirty." So I'd go home and I would say, "Oh, no."
There's a kind of Buckeye surrealism in big American advertisements with their weird meetings of image and their overlaps and sudden cut-offs and giant size. And that went into Rosenquist paintings. They had a casual narrative style, but enormous, the scale of 19th century history painting. Like billboards, they were about paradise, but a paradise of consumers, fatally compromised. Rosenquist summed up his ambition to be a painter of American history in the one major painting that the Vietnam War provoked, the F-111. The title comes from a bomber the Americans were using against the Vietnamese. Rosenquist distilled a sour irony from the contrast between that killing machine and those emblems of the good life, a life that so many Americans believed was being defended outside Saigon in 1965. In fact, there was only one artist who took on the full weight of the American commonplace, its giganticism, its power of spectacle. But he did it by irony, and his work went far beyond any limits one could assign to the pop sensibility. He was Claes Oldenburg, the thinking person for Disney. Born in Sweden, raised in Chicago, Oldenburg grew up fascinated by the size of things American. From the beginning, his art was literally about appetite, the desire to touch, squash, stroke, absorb, digest, and become what he saw.
Probably I do two things that are contrary. I try to make the art look like it's part of the world around it. At the same time, I take great pains to show that it doesn't function as part of the world around it.
He took ordinary things. Small ones got huge, soft ones hard. Hard ones went soft. This is a ladder. This is a sword. The logic of use is gone. Things take on multiple meanings, and they keep alluding back to the human body. A Chicago firefly becomes a torso with breasts and nipples, a monumental nude.
This is the original fire plug, because this fire plug was directly outside of my house, and this was the fire plug I saw every day. And is more or less the one that my fire plug fantasies are based on. This is the one that was done in 1968 as a souvenir of the Democratic Convention. This way it's kind of breasts, and if you turn it upside down it becomes a bottom half of the torso. These being legs.
I like to take an object and deprive it of its function completely.
Take an ordinary object, change its scale, its material, and suddenly it is a stranger to the world. Weird and complicated.
Well, I mean, I have a condition I want to express about form, and then an object sort of fits into that condition, and then I take the object without thinking too much about the object. That is, this could just as well have been a bank vault, except that I like the license, very simple, very straightforward. and symmetrical form, which is what I was looking for. Something geometric and uncomplicated.
I suppose the best examples of this recomplication of an ordinary thing back into an image lie in Oldenburg's sculptural projects, his big ones, the monuments. Not very many of them have actually been built, but in Philadelphia, this one was. And what could be more ordinary than a clothespin? But on the other hand, you'd have to go some way before you found anything more dreamlike and grotesque than a clothespin 40 feet high. Like a monster in a movie, it suggests that the real world has somehow tried to rise against its owners. But it's also partly human, a fact which underscores its monstrosity. The clothespin has two legs, and one is encouraged, therefore, to read it as a man. The spring clip on the thing's torso suggests compression, force, inhibition. The angles are all sharp and there's nothing flabby. The thing is in fact a giant authority figure, a sort of parody of the hero in sculpture. A modern Colossus of Rhodes. Oldenburg's range goes all the way from that to the pastoral. Like this giant trout. In his power of invention and his drive to impose his whole self on the world, fears and all, he is the nearest equivalent to Picasso that America has yet produced.